Twitter is a very interesting place, to say the very least, in the big 2026. And as a result, I thought it would be fun to ask the people of Twitter to ask me anything NFL related for a chance to be featured in this video you're watching right now. I got a couple responses. We're going to go through most of them. Not a lot to talk about going into this one. I feel like this is pretty straightforward. It's going to give me a chance to talk about things I might not normally think to talk about, or things that just wouldn't warrant a video by themselves. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the questions that the good people of Twitter decided to ask me way too long ago because I got sick and took too long to record this video. Starting off here with our first question coming from my buddy Jarrett. He asks, is Cooper Kupp, who is one of his favorite players in the NFL, a Hall of Famer, in my opinion? And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't think Cooper Kupp really has much of an argument at all for the Hall of Fame. I love Cooper Kupp, don't get me wrong. That 2021 season is special and will go down as one of the greatest receiver seasons in NFL history. But the problem is Cooper Kupp doesn't really have a whole lot to his name outside of that season. He doesn't have any All-Pro nods or Pro Bowl nods outside of that 1 year. He never broke 1,000 yards. He was never some super ultra dominant player outside of that one season. That 1 year is really his entire resume, and the Hall of Fame is not going to induct you based off of a single season. Now, we've seen them induct guys for like 4 or 5 seasons, but those seasons were unreal. Look at like Terrell Davis of the Denver Broncos, for example, who had like an 8-year career and ended up being a Hall of Famer because he won Offensive Player of the Year, MVP, Super Bowl MVP, had a 2,000-yard rushing season, like all sorts of crazy things spread out over a couple years, right? Cooper Kupp has that 1 year, which if it's not already, I'm sure will have like an exhibit in Canton. But I don't think Cooper Kupp is a Hall of Fame caliber player unless something crazy were to happen over the course of like the next 5 years. You know, maybe he has back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, wins another Offensive Player of the Year, you know, something absolutely unbelievable. But we are talking about, the wide receiver 3 in Seattle, wide receiver 2 in Seattle, who just really isn't a superstar player at this point in his career. So as much as I like Cooper Kupp, as much as I'd love to sit here and say, absolutely, he's a Hall of Fame receiver, I can't. I unfortunately cannot, because his career and his longevity and his overall resume just isn't that of a Hall of Fame caliber player. Sticking with the Hall of Fame theme, we've got a pair of questions here from my friend Nicole, the first of which asks, who should be a first ballot Hall of Famer next year? And this one I think is pretty straightforward. I think the two most obvious answers are Adrian Peterson and Rob Gronkowski. Adrian Peterson, honestly, him and Gronk both, I think, speak for themselves, but AP, 4-time first-team All-Pro, MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, top 5 in rushing yards all time, led the league in yards and touchdowns multiple times throughout his career. I would say pretty firmly one of the 5 greatest running backs in NFL history. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't think there's anything that has a chance at keeping him out. And with Gronk, I think the story is pretty similar. He is one of the greatest tight ends in NFL history. Sure, he had some health issues, but when he was on the field, you could count maybe on one hand how many players were more purely dominant than Rob Gronkowski, right? It's like Shaq in the NBA. Shaq is probably not a lot of people's GOAT, but if you're talking about who's the single most dominant player, the most unguardable, unstoppable player, a lot of people will tell you Shaquille O'Neal. Gronk is that for NFL players. Like, there really is not a lot of arguments against Gronk. And then his career accolades and numbers as well. He's got the numbers, multiple-time first-team All-Pro, multiple-time Super Bowl champion, because they care about that even though Gronk's a tight end. One of the best playoff performers in NFL history. He's a lock, right? Him and Bill Belichick, I feel, will be getting in together next year alongside Adrian Peterson. And then some of the other names that are coming out next year, or first-time eligible next year. Ben Roethlisberger, I don't know if he'll get in due to a lack of accolades. No All-Pros to his name, was kind of like the 4th or 5th, maybe 6th best guy in his era. Granted, he played in the greatest quarterback era in NFL history, and will definitely get enshrined at some point. I somehow totally forgot to mention the off-the-field stuff with Roethlisberger, which I do firmly believe will play into him not being a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Not sure how or why that skipped my mind when I was recording this, but it's definitely something that is going to be taken into account, and another reason why I don't think he should be a first ballot guy. But I don't think a first ballot Hall of Fame nod is in his future. Eric Weddle's another guy that really intrigues me as a multiple-time All-Pro, Super Bowl champion, really, really good numbers, all-decade team member. I don't think he'll get first ballot because he is a safety that wasn't like extraordinarily dominant. Like when you look at Eric Weddle's resume, you're probably going to say to yourself, wow, I kind of forgot Eric Weddle was like that if you're anything like me. Unless you were a true football sicko during his prime, at which case I commend you. I was just like 12. So I unfortunately don't have that locked away in the back of my brain, but when I was doing research for this video, he definitely stood out. Andrew Whitworth is another name that I know a lot of people are going to go to. He doesn't really have the accolades either, but long NFL career, Super Bowl champion. Alex Mack, kind of a similar story. Richard Sherman had a very, very good prime, maybe the best zone corner the NFL's ever seen, the best player on one of the best defenses in NFL history, but I think his longevity or lack thereof will keep him out from being a first ballot guy. And then some of the other names. Antonio Brown has no shot at getting in the Hall of Fame. I don't think I have to explain why. Le'Veon Bell, his teammate, kind of a similar story, but not for the same reasons. He won't get in because his prime was just way too short. And then Cam Newton, he was so inconsistent. He does have that 1 year, and, you know, kind of the same thing with Cooper Kupp. I don't think they're going to put him in the Hall of Fame based off a single season. It would be really cool if they did, because I like Cam Newton as a player. I think that would be awesome to see him get put in the Hall of Fame, but realistically, I don't foresee that happening either. So, final answer to the question, I would go with Adrian Peterson and Gronk, with guys like Big Ben, Eric Weddle, etc., definitely being on the horizon. You know, definitely within the next 5, 6, 7 years as potential Hall of Famers. And then the other Hall of Fame question here, who has waited too long for the Hall of Fame already? The cop-out answer is Bill Belichick. He should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think anyone with a brain is in agreement. He got left out because of really dumb politics. But that's kind of the cop-out answer. Like I said, my actual answer is Lorenzo Neal. I think Lorenzo Neal not being in the Hall of Fame already is criminal. We're talking about a true blocking fullback who played for 16 years, blocked for 11 consecutive 1,000-yard rushers, was a multi-time All-Pro, multi-time Pro Bowler, member of the 2000s decade team, one of the greatest LA Chargers of all time, or I guess San Diego Chargers back when they played there. He is the greatest blocking fullback in NFL history, and there are a lot of guys, LaDainian Tomlinson being the biggest name, that can attribute a lot of their success as NFL players to running behind Lorenzo Neal. He was an absolute monster, and the fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame is absolutely ridiculous to me. Like, he has the resume of an elite left tackle as a fullback, and those guys get put in the Hall of Fame. I know fullback, people don't care about fullbacks, but Lorenzo Neal absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. They haven't enshrined a fullback since the 80s. Larry Zonka was the last big one, and I think he and Larry Centers and Mike Allstott, off the top of my head, absolutely should end up in the Hall of Fame. But I'm not a greedy man. If I had to pick one, I would absolutely say Lorenzo Neal. And the fact that he is not in yet absolutely baffles me, because he needs to be put in. That way he can pave the way for Kyle Juszczyk to get put in here in a couple years as well. So to answer the second question, Lorenzo Neal absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame and should have been put in a couple years ago. This is a fun one here from my buddy Prime. He asks, if you were forced to support an NFL team that was not the Chicago Bears, and then he clarifies that in this scenario, Chicago has been nuked, which, unfortunately, given recent events, could happen. Which NFL team would it be? And then as a bonus, it could be from another sport. Well, my fandom for sports is kind of weird. I am not from Chicago. I've never even been to the city. I'm a diehard Bears fan because of my dad. He grew up a Bears fan. He indoctrinated me into Bears fandom. But outside of that, I am a North Carolina Tar Heels fan, specifically for college basketball. That is also because of my dad. He grew up a Tar Heels fan. You know, he was born in the 80s, would have gotten to watch a little Michael Jordan, and then, you know, some of the greats after that. I got put onto the Tar Heels around the time of Tyler Zeller. He was my first favorite Tar Heel. I also remember guys like Luke May, who is my favorite collegiate athlete ever. Guys like Brady Manick in more recent years, Justin Jackson, Joel Berry, Bryce Johnson is another one of my favorite college basketball players ever. I love the Tar Heels. I'm not a big basketball guy, but I do watch just about every Tar Heels game, especially when it comes to the tournament, obviously. I am locked in. No matter where I'm at, I am watching the North Carolina Tar Heels if they're playing. And then for the NBA, I am a casual fan. I'm a Spurs fan. And the reason I am a Spurs fan is because I got really tired of the Bulls front office. I picked the Bulls not even because of the Bears, it was because of Michael Jordan. I am a Jordan GOAT truther. I was raised a Jordan fan. The first pair of sneakers I ever owned were a pair of Jordans. It's in my blood, right? So I became a Bulls fan naturally because of MJ, but then I realized at a certain point, the team I love and I put everything into in Chicago, the Bears, has a terrible front office. The team that I kind of casually follow in Chicago has a terrible front office that might be even worse. Why am I subjecting myself to this torture? And so I realized that I have free will. I said, I'm done with the Bulls. This team has lost any support that I could give them. There's just too much going on, and I'm not enjoying the sport of basketball enough to be a diehard Bulls fan, right? Like, shout out to the people that are. I recognize that this is a bad look for me. I would never do this with the NFL because I enjoy this sport to its fullest. Basketball is more of a casual thing for me. So then I decided on the Spurs because I went, okay, what team am I going to like? Well, Tim Duncan, one of my favorite basketball players ever, is a very big Bears fan. And if Tim Duncan's rocking with the Bears, why would I not be rocking with Tim Duncan? So I became a Spurs fan, just so happened to be right around when a certain French man came in, and, you know how that's gone. So I lucked out there. But for the NFL, if I had to pick a different team to be a fan of, this might be a cop-out answer, but I would say that I would just be one of those people who say they're an NFL fan. I don't think I could commit to another team like I have the Bears. I just don't see it. Any team I could maybe think about, there's just really, really big drawbacks with. Growing up, my dad and I loved watching Belichick and Brady, so my mind immediately goes, okay, what about the Patriots? No, I do not want to associate myself with Boston sports. Absolutely not. And then the other team would be the 49ers, but I would be a fan of them based on players that are currently playing and on the wrong side of 30, being Kyle Juszczyk and Fred Warner. And I don't want to plant my flag on a team and then 2 years later, the reason I'm a fan of that team being gone, if that, especially Juszczyk, he got cut last year. He got brought back, obviously, but we don't know how much longer he's going to be a 49ers. So I think I would just say I am an NFL fan. I would root for players. I would root for results. I wouldn't really be rooting for a specific team. And honestly, it might help me with my analysis a little bit. I'd spend less time talking about the Bears and maybe be a little bit more unbiased. But yeah, I know that's a cop-out answer, but that's definitely the route I would end up going. Next question here. Could the hiring of John Harbaugh be a similar rise for the Giants as it was for the Patriots? We obviously won't have such an easy schedule, so I don't see the Super Bowl, but playoffs perhaps? I'm going to say no. I made my video about the coach hirings a couple weeks ago now, and I spoke very favorably about John Harbaugh, and I do think the John Harbaugh hiring for the Giants was fantastic. I stand by it was the right move. It was exactly what they needed. That team needed an adult in the building desperately, and that is what Harbaugh is. However, playoffs immediately, I don't foresee. In 2 years, absolutely. We need more than one offseason. And the biggest reason for that is the offensive coordinator that Harbaugh hired. Nagy running the ship offensively is going to be disastrous for them. I don't think they'll be quite as bad as the 4-13, which you can see in our friend here's username. But I don't think it's going to be playoffs, because not only do I have so little faith in Nagy as a play caller, as an offensive mind, as someone working with a second-year quarterback, I also just think the NFC is far too stacked for the Giants to really wiggle their way in there, because that was one of the big reasons why the Patriots were so successful. The AFC was uncharacteristically weak this year, especially in comparison to the NFC. The Patriots did not have a super difficult schedule, and when they got to the playoffs, they didn't have a whole lot of problems. They went up against the Chargers, who didn't have a single competent offensive lineman. They went up against the Broncos without Bo Nix. And who was their other game? The Texans, who really struggled offensively throughout the year. They didn't have the hardest road to the Super Bowl, and then they got routed by the Seahawks. In the NFC, you have Seattle, you have San Francisco, you have the Rams, you have the Bears, you have the Packers, you have the Lions, you have the Vikings if they can get JJ McCarthy to play football correctly. You have the Falcons, who I'm really excited about. You have the Saints, who we'll talk about for a later question in this video, and I'm overly excited about. In your own division, you have the Cowboys, who are a couple pieces away from being legit again. You have the Eagles, who were just in the playoffs. There are a lot of really good competitive teams in the NFC, to the point where I don't think any team that doesn't have a true, certified quarterback coach combo is certified quarterback and offensive coach combo is going to find a lot of success, like point blank period. I just don't. Like, this isn't as much of a knock on the Giants as it is just an understanding of their surroundings and what they're dealing with, and then a knock on Nagy, obviously. But give it a year. Let them realize that the Nagy experiment was a bad idea. And I know it's because Harbaugh missed out on like 3 offensive coordinators. Let that simmer for a year, go through the process, fire him in the offseason, bring in someone with at least half a brain, and the Giants could absolutely be in the playoffs come 2027. I think that is the earliest we're going to see them compete. I could be wrong. Maybe Nagy gets it together and we find out just how horrific the Bears quarterbacks were with Trubisky and Fields, which certainly is in the cards. But I also turn your attention to the Chiefs when Nagy was the offensive coordinator and how their offense never really felt like it was going anywhere. And you also see a lot of Chiefs fans online talking about how Nagy is like the root of the issue with this team. And it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I don't like want to shit on the Giants. This is not a knock on them. It's just, I don't trust Nagy. And I think they have a very, very competitive environment around them that just isn't going to lend itself to a playoff appearance as soon as next year. Next up, we've got a pair of questions about the Bears. Our first one here is from my friend Tegan, who asks, is Colston Loveland a top 5 tight end in the NFL? And if not, where do you place him among his peers? Now, this one is tricky for me because I am a stickler when it comes to positional rankings. I do not like ranking rookies in the top 10 at their position. Now, there are exceptions to this. Obviously, Bijan Robinson was a top 10 running back as a rookie. Brock Bowers was a top 10 tight end as a rookie. But it's typically like positions where there's either a lot of turnover in terms of who the best players are, or it's guys that are like pure standout unicorn exceptions, right? And because of how weak the tight end position is in the NFL right now, in terms of like star talent, like there's a lot of quality tight ends, a lot of Cole Kmet level guys, but there's not a lot of superstar tight ends in the NFL. So because of that, I would say Loveland is firmly a top 10 guy, but top 5 I think would be a bit too rich for me. Who I'd have ahead of him, I don't know. That's a whole other conversation. I would have to sit down and figure out quite a bit. But I wouldn't be comfortable calling him top 5 right now. 3 weeks into next year, when he has 100 yards, 100 yards, and 100 yards, the Bears are 3-0, had the best offense in football, we can have a different conversation, obviously. But in all seriousness, at this current moment, I wouldn't call him top 5, but I would definitely say he's firmly in the top 10. And I would say the same goes for Tyler Warren as well, because I know you can't bring up one without the other in today's landscape. So yeah, top 10, but not top 5 for me right now. Sticking with the Bears questions, the next one here from my buddy Andrew. He asks, what should be the Bears pass catcher hierarchy for next season? Now, I'm going to operate under the assumption that DJ Moore is no longer a Chicago Bear next season, which is unfortunate. I am a big-time DJ Moore defender, but given the cap situation, especially finding out that Drew Dalman was no longer going to be playing football yesterday, the Bears are going to have to move on from DJ Moore. They have a very talented group of pass catchers, and keeping around a guy like Moore on the contract he's currently on just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially when you have needs at other positions. So from there, I think the number one target in this Bears offense next year will surprise nobody. It should absolutely be Colston Loveland. He showed time and time again in the back half of the season and into the playoffs that he is the most consistent, most reliable player the Bears have as a pass catcher currently. I think he is a superstar in the making. I know I just sat here and said I don't think he's a top 5 tight end, but again, I said he was top 10. So I think Loveland absolutely should be the top dog in the hierarchy next year. And then after that, I think it kind of depends on who takes a step quicker between Burden and Odunze. Rome has a little bit of an excuse. He was a great rookie last year. He had his struggles, was playing with a foot injury, which is obviously going to throw off your rhythm as a route runner and as a player. And also, not playing at 100% will impact your confidence. Led to a lot of drops, a lot of misses from Rome. So the hope is now that he's healthy, he'll be able to work past all that and continue on the trajectory he was on. And then Luther Burden, not the biggest sample size in the world, but when they got the ball in his hands, hoo boy, he was a stud for Chicago last year. So I would probably lean Burden at the current moment because I think he is the closest in skill set to DJ Moore. And we saw that the Bears really wanted to get DJ Moore involved last year. Burden is even quicker and better after the catch, so I think he will be your number 2. Rome will be your number 3. Komet will be your number 4, who I know a lot of people are not the biggest fan of, but like, he's consistent, he's reliable. You take away that Raiders game last year where he was 100% playing injured, whether it was a concussion or his back, he was not playing at 100%. It resulted in some drops for him. You take that away, he shows up when the Bears need him. In the end zone against Philadelphia, in the end zone against the Rams, he picks up first downs, he finds ways to get open, and teams forget about him. You have Loveland, Burden, and Odunze out there. Teams aren't covering Komet nearly as tight. They're going to put their second, third linebacker on him, and at that point, get big, right? Like, Komet is a good football player. He will be the number 4 for Chicago next year, and then after that, it is probably whoever ends up being your wide receiver 3, whether you keep Olamide Zaccheaus, you use Jade Walker there, you sign a free agent, whoever it is, to kind of replace the gap that DJ Moore would leave, or I suppose the gap that Luther Burden moving up the hierarchy in place of DJ Moore would leave, however you want to put it. And then after that, it would be your running backs. Obviously, Swift is a very capable pass catcher, assuming he's still with the team next year. I know there's a lot of rumblings about him maybe getting cut. And then Munungai, catching isn't his strong suit. We'll just say that, so keep him at the bottom. But I definitely think Loveland, Burden, Odunze, and whatever order you want to put 2 and 3, and then Komet in your next receiver is like the pretty, cut and dry 1 through 5 for the Bears pass catcher hierarchy next year. I don't think there's much of an argument at this current moment. That could change if Rome or Burden takes a huge step forward, and all of a sudden we're talking about one of them with Loveland as who's the number 1, but at this current moment, I think he definitely stands alone at the top for Chicago. Another ranking question here, this time from my boy Jaden. He asks, where do you rank George Pickens at in terms of the top receivers? And I don't have an exact number. I'm not going to say he's like number 7 in the league because there are so many super, super talented receivers. But I think it's hard to say he's not in the top 10. I think he is firmly in the top 10. This is somebody who has continued to ascend each and every year of his career, despite really, really bad quarterback play in Pittsburgh. And then he goes to Dallas. He gets paired with a great quarterback in Dak Prescott. And all of a sudden, he takes over. He went nuclear. Top 3 in yards, top 10 in touchdowns. He was an absolute superstar, and he was doing that all while sharing the field, for part of the year with CeeDee Lamb. Like, his numbers would have been insane if he was just the number 1 for Dallas from start to finish last year. He probably would have been putting up numbers pretty close to what JSN had. And yeah, I think he proved last year he's a superstar. He showed up big in so many moments, really big third down threat for the Cowboys. There's a reason they're willing to pay him so much on that franchise tag, and they're trying to get him extended long term. He's going to continue to be a monster for them. Him and CeeDee is an absolutely unbelievable pairing where you have 2 top 10 receivers as your 2 receivers for Dak Prescott. So I don't have a whole lot more to say. I think it's pretty cut and dry at this point that George Pickens is a top 10 receiver. Where you rank him in that top 10, I'll leave that up to you. Let me know down in the comments below where you think. But for me, he is absolutely, firmly, comfortably in the top 10 right now. Next question here comes from my buddy and podcast co-host Jake Talks Sports, and he asks, who's more of a blueprint for future head coaching hires, Sean McVay or Mike Macdonald? And I'm going to say Sean McVay. And it really just boils down to the NFL is an offensive league. It is going to prioritize offense. It's going to prioritize the young, upstart, creative football sicko offensive minds that have found a lot of success in the league. You look at Sean McVay as the blueprint for that. Liam Cohen and Ben Johnson last year were huge. Clint Kubiak was one of the big coaching hirings this offseason. I think that's going to continue to be the meta, the blueprint. What everyone wants is the young, offensive-minded guy who's going to come in, turn things around, and be on the same page with your quarterback long-term, right? Because if you go with the defensive guy, you're going to have a carousel of offensive coordinators working with your quarterback, and very rarely is that a good thing. Now, that's not to say that these defensive guys can't work. They absolutely can. Mike Macdonald just won a Super Bowl, and Seattle will probably stay in contention, if not win another ring, for the next, 5-6 years. Like, this is a really well-built roster. Macdonald is a fantastic coach. The problem is, he's kind of a unicorn. There's not a lot of guys like Macdonald. Jesse Minter, that just got hired by the Ravens, is absolutely in that vein. But if you're going to get a defensive head coach, it's got to be one of these young, schematic, gurus. Like, that's the meta. At the end of the day, the real meta is just young football sickos. These guys who are obsessed with scheme, obsessed with kind of subverting expectations, not the old guys, not the hard asses, not the Vic Fangios of the world. Sean McVay and Mike Macdonald really are the same blueprint, just on opposite sides of the ball, but I still think the offensive guy is going to continue to succeed. Now, I do think Mike Macdonald's success will result in more success stories for these defensive guys. I mentioned Minter. I really think Minter is going to pan out for Baltimore, but at the end of the day, it's an offensive league, and I think the offensive guys are going to continue to reign supreme. So if I had to pick one, I'm definitely going with McVay. We're going to end off here with a question from my friend Grayson, who actually has 2 questions, and his other question will be getting made into a video at some point. I'm not going to reveal what it is. You'll have to wait and see. But this question here is going to be our last one for this video, and that is, who has the best chance at going from worst to first in the next year, and why? And immediately 2 names come to mind, 2 teams come to mind, being the Saints and Lions. Now, I'm going to go with the Saints here because I think the Saints have a far easier path to going from worst to first. The Lions, they have the Bears and the Packers in their division, who were both just in the playoffs, both very, very good teams. The Packers will be at full strength with Micah Parsons coming back. The Bears have the ability to make some pretty notable upgrades this offseason, as well as a continued trajectory of growth with Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson and the other young offensive guys we've already talked about. And they also have the Vikings, who have a really good roster. They just got to figure out the quarterback. If J.J. McCarthy can prove to be, a solid player, then they are also in playoff talks. Whereas the Saints, they're in a division where everybody just finished under 500. The NFC South produced 1 playoff team, and they were 8-9 on the season. It's not the strongest division in the world. The Panthers are feisty, but they're not necessarily like solidified playoff contenders. Tampa Bay, kind of the same deal. Baker's been very inconsistent. They have a lame duck head coach. They're probably losing Mike Evans. Their defense isn't getting any younger. They have some clear issues as well. The Falcons are the one team that I feel can stand in their way, and it's because I'm a big fan of their hiring of Kevin Stefanski. I love their defense. They have a lot of exciting offensive pieces, but at the end of the day, they still have Michael Penix at quarterback, and that could hold them back a lot. We're asking a lot of Stefanski to go into Atlanta and make Penix work to make the playoffs. It's possible. I think Stefanski can do it, but it's no guarantee. So with the only thing standing in the Saints' way being held back by Michael Penix, I really feel like there's a world where they can make the playoffs. Like, looking at the Saints roster, you have Tyler Shuck, who I'm a huge fan of, looked very promising in his starts last year. He has great chemistry with Chris Olave. They have a quality offensive line with rookie Kelvin Banks and Talise Fuanga and Eric McCoy. And they have opportunities to potentially add up front to make that offensive line even better. Their run game was improving as the season went on. Obviously, they have opportunities to add more there as well. And they have some nice pieces on defense. They have a young secondary. They have some quality linebackers. Chase Young has proven to be a worthwhile investment for the Saints. They also have a high pick. They could add even more on defense. There is a world where the Saints could explode next year. If Kellen Moore and Tyler Shuck continue on the trajectory they're on and continue their growth, I really like them as a quarterback head coach pairing. So I would say they have the best chance. Now, are they the best team that could go from worst to first? No, that would be the Lions. But again, I think they have a lot more standing in their way than the Saints do. But anyways, folks, that is going to do it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to leave a like down below, as it does help out the channel a ton. It shows your support, it shows you care, and I really do appreciate it. Also, make sure to subscribe for more NFL content coming your way throughout the rest of the offseason. I've got a very fun Fullback Friday planned for this Friday. We're also going to do something before free agency, talking about some of my favorite free agents and things of that nature. And we also have some other fun videos planned this offseason. I'm going to do a lot of experimenting on this channel throughout the next couple months to see what kind of things I vibe with and to see what kind of things you guys like. So you definitely won't want to miss what's coming. And also make sure to let me know down in the comments below what you thought about this video, what you thought about the questions and my answers to the questions. And also ask your own questions in the comments below. I might respond to them now, or if I get enough, maybe I'll make another one of these videos with YouTube questions as opposed to Twitter questions. See what kind of questions get asked on the different platforms, a little bit of experimenting, if you will. But with all that being said, above all else, I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it because you're all wonderful people and you truly do deserve it.
Had a chance on the throwback.
This was an ill-advised throw. What an unbelievable catch by Cole Kmet. And he cups it too. No movement when he hits the ground, tucked up against his shoulder. Wow.
Using that